BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. Today, it's all about harvest.
Been quite a mixed picture depending on whether you're a livestock farmer or an arable farmer.
It's big, it's bold, and it's a reasonable spec.
The grass is completely dried up, there's no goodness in it, it's just completely stalky with no nutritional value.
Yes, all this week we're following harvest from cereals to peas and fruit. This has been a tricky year for many farmers as drought and rainstorms have had an impact at various times, usually the wrong times. So this week we'll see how Harvest 2025 is shaping up. Let's start in East Anglia, which is perhaps the arable capital of the country. Crops like wheat, barley and oats. After a very dry spring and dry hot early summer, the fear was that we'd be seeing a big loss in yield with fewer heads of grain, and that the grains themselves would be very small because of a lack of moisture. But it seems some cereals have managed to perform better than expected thanks to a small amount of summer rainfall. Back in July, at the start of harvest, which was earlier than usual for many, Anna Hill went out to watch some of the first malting barley being delivered to Dewing Grain in Norfolk, which runs the grain storage facility for Aylsham Grain Farmers Cooperative. Andrew Dewing told her how the crop was looking as it came off the trailer.
The barley that's coming in is winter malting barley, and I just had a look at it, and it's got the problem of this summer, which is awns and broken grains. It's been very hard to thrash out.
What's an awn?
It's the little hairy bit that sticks on the top of the grain, and the combine is supposed to break that off. The grains kind of rushed through to ripeness, went through the growth stages through that drought. It's finished brilliantly. There's been perfect rain and grain fill, but the actual fitness has come in a heat wave, so it isn't really traditionally fit. The drum in the combine can't rub the awns off, and if they pressure it too much, you break the grains in half, and then they're not viable as malting barley. So it's a problem that has been very, very prevalent this year.
This year has been particularly difficult.
It's the spring barley that got planted early in February because that drought had really started then, and the land was ready, and then it just didn't rain. And that affected every crop differently. We've been calling the winter barley crop a disaster, but it in fact wasn't or hasn't been because of the rain in May, the very end of May, and the pure UV from the sun, and then another rain 2 weeks later, and then the Finnish sunshine has given us a decent quality of grain, or albeit with the odd broken grain, but largely it's big, it's bold, and it's a reasonable spec.
Andrew and I have just come into a field full of barley. You can hear it swishing away. You're not a farmer, Andrew. You're a grain merchant, so you're looking at this with a merchant's eyes, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm supposed to say there's something wrong with it now, aren't I?
How does a price then come along in a year like this?
Well, it's a tough question. The prices at the moment are not very good. Let's be clear. The farmers, agriculture itself is feeling under immense pressure, and quite rightly so. It feels like no one's on their side. The prices are down. We can import quite easily from other countries. There's no hesitation for the government to allow that. So here we sit with a very poor price and then a bigger yield. Inevitably, that should mean prices come under even more pressure. However, I think the whole world is at a low ebb in terms of price, and we're just itching for one little problem to appear. There's hints of it. There's the Russian crop isn't as big as they declared. The Chinese crop isn't as big as they declared, probably. So there's a few things that makes the whole world complex go up, which will probably take us with it.
The Met Office has predicted that extreme high temperatures will be normal for future summers. What does that mean for growing cereals in this country?
I think I'd be really happy with it being high temperatures in the middle of summer, because it'll mean dry harvests and a reduction in cost for farmers in storing or harvesting the grain. That would be a real bonus for everyone in agriculture, I think. And certainly from a carbon perspective, not having to use our dryer would be a major, cheer us all up. But if the heat comes in April or May on a developing crop, especially on spring barley, for example, it's a very short growing season, I think it could do immense damage. We've just got to hope that it keeps just about being okay and raining at the last minute, and then it can be as sunny as you like, and then our harvest will be quick. I'll go on holiday in August, which is unheard of, and everyone will be happy, especially the farmer.
Simple as that. Andrew Dewing there with Anna in Norfolk. Well, we perhaps don't think of grass as a crop in the same way as barley, but for livestock farmers, it's the food they grow for their animals. And the hot, dry weather has had a big impact on grass growth in some areas, in that there hasn't been any. As Dave Harvey, BBC Points West Environment correspondent, reports from the southwest of England.
Breakfast time for Sarah Godwin's cows in her dry Wiltshire fields. A tractor is pulling racks of feed along and the cows can hardly wait, jostling to get first munch.
Just bringing what they'd normally eat in the winter, bringing it out to them in the fields to eat in the summer because there's no grass.
They run along with the tractor and then when it stops, all I can see is a huge crowd of cattle. Somewhere in the middle, a rack of nutritious feed. Saved for the winter, but vital to keep these cows healthy now. Sarah and her farm team have never done this before. It's never been this dry for so long.
Is there much for them in this field?
No, it's nothing at all. The grass is completely dried up. There's no goodness in it. It's just completely stalky with no nutritional value.
And have you ever had to do this before?
Never, no. We've never known a season like this. Never known the heat, the dry, the lack of rain, and for such a prolonged period as well.
Although we're now in the heat of summer, the damage was actually done months ago. To see exactly what's happening, I went to a test field, a grass meadow grown at Cirencester's Royal Agricultural University, scrutinised by Professor Nikki Cannon.
When the grass is cut, you can see there's very little green material above it, and there's very little leaf on these plants. Most of it has really shriveled up. And it's really the leaf that contains the sugar, which is the tasty bit and the energy for the cattle to eat.
Ironically, some plants are doing well. Nikki shows me a dock, its leaves fat and green, long roots finding deep water. Pink and yellow wildflowers are pretty healthy too. But in a grazing pasture, all these are weeds, and the grass has been ruined by the long, dry spring.
We've had 50% of the expected spring rainfall. They say that spring is the season that is the fastest warming out of the 4 seasons of the year, and that's really the important time for plant growth.
So climate change is really here?
Climate change is really here, yes.
The seasons are completely muddled. We're getting extreme weather, heavy downpours, drought periods. It's really difficult to manage.
Until we get rain and lots of it, dairy farmers like Sarah will be feeding their cattle on expensive winter feed. And what they'll do when actual winter comes, well, that's probably for another day.
Dave Harvey reporting there. So, with harvest in full swing, weather permitting, how's it going overall? I spoke to Olivia Bonser, Senior Cereals Analyst at the industry body, the AHDB.
So it's quite variable at the moment. We're, nearing completion with winter barley, just a bit left in sort of Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then we're sort of progressing through the other winter crops, so winter wheat, winter oilseed rape. Still obviously then got sort of the spring crops to really get into, but generally it's quite variable because of the weather conditions.
As we've heard, there were some dire warnings about both yield and quality for cereal crops this year. How is it working out? How is yield looking?
So again, it's quite variable, and it's very much dependent on whereabouts in the country you are, but also to do with soil type. So we've seen, for example, the crops on the much lighter soils faring a bit worse off, basically, because they've not been able to retain any sort of moisture throughout the growing season. But then on the sort of heavier soils, it's probably fared a bit better. For winter wheat, for example, yields are generally averaging below the 5-year average. However, winter OSR, for example, is quite a bit above average.
And generally speaking, what's the quality like?
Yeah, so it's a bit early on the wheat side of things, but it's a bit of a concern at the moment with these showers that we're having. So if you have really wet weather before you cut the crop, you can have issues with Hagberg especially.
And Hagberg is the all-important measure of how much protein is going to be in that wheat, which will decide how much it's worth, because whether it can go for baking or whether it ends up as feed for animals. Yeah,
and if it doesn't meet that Hagberg requirement, the farmers can't get the premium for it.
So what about the quality on other things then?
For winter barley, for example, quality is quite good. We have a lot of spring malting barley. So it's a little bit early on the quality side, but I wouldn't say major concern at the moment. It's just a case of watching the weather over the next couple of weeks and the impact that that could have.
And it does always come back to the weather, doesn't it? We are expecting rain, if not storms, over this week, and that's not ideal if you're trying to harvest.
No, exactly. As well as the quality side of things that could be hindered by that wetter weather. If you're combining the grain and the moisture's too high, the farmers can't sell it if the moisture's above a certain level. So they'll have to put it through a grain dryer, and that obviously incurs extra costs for the farmer as well.
Could be good news, though, for livestock farmers trying to grow grass.
Yeah, definitely. It's been quite a mixed picture, depending on whether you're a livestock farmer or an arable farmer. This rain's quite welcome, probably, if you're a livestock farmer, because of the struggle that they've had not having enough forage. But hopefully this rain that we're seeing at the moment is mitigating it a bit.
Is there anything farmers can do to mitigate against all these variables? Or is it really a case of just taking a deep breath and praying to the weather gods?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think there's a few different ideas that people are trying, whether that's sort of differing varieties. So varieties are always being developed to try and sort of adapt to those more extreme weather conditions, and also trying to drill at different periods, looking at different cultivation methods. It's quite difficult at the end of the day, because essentially the crop needs certain conditions to grow no matter what you do. And so to an extent, we're still very much guided by those weather conditions.
Olivia Bonser from the AHDB. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney. And Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.